Hello everyone and welcome back to Redstone for Beginners, and in this episode we're going to be talking about redstone clocks. Now when we started this series we started with circuits like this. Very simple and very basic as it needed to be. But in this episode we are going to step it up. See, I've got the steps there. And we're going to talk about circuits that are a little bit more complicated, like this thing here, which is a redstone clock, by the way. Now, I don't want you to be worried, because even though this is a step up, using the knowledge that we've gained so far in the series, we should be able to understand this just fine. So, in terms of what we use redstone clocks for, well, we have different types of redstone signal. So we have a constant redstone signal, so if I turn on this lever, this redstone lamp turns on and stays on. We also have what we call a pulse, which is where something turns on and then it turns off. So you get a little bit of redstone signal and then it turns off. But this isn't very useful for things like droppers. So let's say I've got a dropper here and I want it to give me lots of ender pearls that I can use. I want it to spit them out automatically for me. Now, I can't really use a lever, because if I switch it on with the lever, that happens. I get one ender pearl at a time. It's the same for a button. I press the button, one ender pearl. What I really need for this is a redstone clock, because a redstone clock will flash on and off like this, so I don't have to spam a lever or a button. So here's the first of a few designs that I'm going to share with you. There's lots of designs for redstone clocks out there, but I'm just going to show you a few for simplicity's sake. So first off, I've got a block here that I'm going to power, and I've got my output, which is the same dropper filled up with lots of ender pearls. So I'm going to place a redstone torch on the back of this block here, and I'm going to place a redstone repeater here. If you notice, it's lit up, which means it's powered. And I'm going to place another repeater pointing back into that same block. Now when I connect these with some redstone dust, you can see there is our clock. It's turning on and off. So this will be perfect for things like a dropper. If I place a redstone repeater here to power this dropper, it will keep on spitting out ender pearls until I turn it off by flipping this lever here. Now another thing I will add is that we can change the speed of this clock. So if I turn it on again, and I increase the delay with these repeaters, you could see there it's actually gotten much slower. So you can change that depending on how quickly or slowly you want the items to come out. And to make it even slower, you can even add an extra repeater. So I add an extra repeater going out here, an extra repeater going in here, and then I have an even slower redstone clock. I haven't connected it to the dropper this time, but you get the idea. Okay then, this next design uses a comparator and is a much faster clock. And we are going to use this with our dispenser here that is filled with arrows. Now, if you've got a dispenser filled with arrows you want to set up as a trap, you want those arrows to be firing out as fast as possible. So for this design, I've got another block which we can power. Remember, this doesn't have to be a lever, this could be any input that you want. And you're going to place a comparator like that. You're going to have redstone dust coming out and going back into the side like that. And I'm going to place this comparator into subtract mode. If you notice, when I turn this lever on, we get a super fast redstone clock like that. Now, you might think that this is turning on and off, which isn't quite true. We're actually going from a very strong signal to a very weak signal. And because of that, we can't actually take a redstone output out like that, because the weak signal is still strong enough to power this repeater. Now, I can either take a redstone output out from here, because here the redstone signal is too weak that it can't actually power the repeater when it's off, or I can follow the redstone dust around here and then place a repeater here. And as soon as I place this, you can see just how fast that redstone clock is. Perfect for traps. Now, for the next redstone clock, I need to first introduce you to a hopper. Now, if you don't know what a hopper simply transfers items from one inventory to another. So I've just got a normal chest here, and I'm going to shift right-click the top of it with a hopper. Now, it needs to be a shift right-click, so if I just right-click, well then I'm going to open the chest. And I'm going to place another chest on top of that, like so. Now, if I place, let's say, a water bucket in here, you see it disappears immediately. The hopper's going to take it up, and it's going to place it in this chest like this. You could also place hoppers to the side. Again, shift right click. I'm going to place a chest on top of it like that. Exactly the same way. Let's put a piece of sandstone in here, and it's going to go in there like that. Now, the other thing that you could do with hoppers, which is pretty cool, is that you can lock them. So this hopper here, I'm going to place a redstone block next to it. Remember, that's powering this hopper, which means it's locked. It can no longer accept items. So now I'm going to put 16 ender pearls in here, and you notice they are staying put. They're not going to go into that hopper because that hopper is locked. As soon as I break this block though, the ender pearls are making their way into that chest over there. And you'll need a hopper for this type of redstone clock. Now, this is called an Etho hopper clock, named after Etho's lab. I'll put a link to his original design in the description. Now, this is a very useful clock. I'll admit it looks a little bit more complicated than some of the builds we've seen before, but it's still worth building just because of how useful it is. Now, the way this works, we have two hoppers that are connected to each other. You see there. So when you put items in them, they're going to cycle between each of these hoppers. Now, when they do that, they're going to activate each of these pistons at their side, which is going to push this redstone block back and forth, back and forth. And that is going to work as a redstone clock. And you could just simply use the redstone block to take an output from it. And to turn it off and on, all you do is power one or both of these hoppers, like I have done here with this lever. You see it's powered on. So if I turn this redstone clock on, you'll see it's powering the redstone lamp, but once all the items have gone to the other hopper, the piston's going to shift the redstone block and it's going to turn off. Now, the great thing about this design is we can customize it very easily. So if I were to take, for example, half of these ender pearls out and turn it back on, then the clock will get faster. So the more items you have in the hoppers, the slower the clock will be. Very easy to customize, very relatively simple to build. It's just a good design overall. Okay, so to make one of these, you'll need to place a block like this. You take your first hopper and you right click the side of the block like that. So you'll notice the spout of the hopper underneath is pointing into that block, which is what we want. You break that temporary block and you do the same thing with your second hopper. You shift, right click the edge of that hopper. Remember, you need to shift right click. If you normally right click, then you'll just open its inventory like that. So there are our two hoppers. Then we need two comparators to take a signal out of each of them. One comparator there, one comparator there. And that will point into two full blocks. I've gone with smooth stone. It doesn't really matter which block you use. Then you're going to place two pieces of redstone dust like this. You'll notice this circuit is quite symmetrical, which is quite useful. And again, two sticky pistons facing inwards, placing them down like that. Then our redstone block, it doesn't matter where you place it here or there, it doesn't really matter. And then just a piece of redstone dust or a repeater, whatever you fancy, and there will be your output. Let's say this time I want to power a sticky piston. Then all you have to do is power one of the hoppers to make it toggleable. So if I place a lever there, I can turn it off and on. Doesn't have to be a lever, remember, this could be any input. And I'm going to put 17 arrows, let's say, and then the hopper clock is going to start working. As soon as those items have gone to the next hopper, it's going to turn off like that, and so on and so forth. And last but certainly not least is this beauty of a circuit that I'm about to build for you, which I'm going to refer to as an auto dropper, and it also works with things like dispensers. Now, how this circuit works is if this dropper contains any number of items, then it will be powered and it will keep spitting out those items until it is empty. And the beautiful thing about this is it's going to be completely automatic. So I'm not going to need to do a thing here. All I need to do is supply it with items and then it will spit them back out, which is extremely useful when it comes to moving items, traps and things like this. It's just a very useful circuit in general. So I have my dropper here. All I'm going to do is place a comparator out from the back of it, and we know from how comparators work that as soon as there's an item in here, we get a comparator output like that. Now, we're going to need a repeater here, because remember, if there's only one item in this dropper, that signal is actually going to be very weak, so it's not even going to power this second piece of redstone dust. So that's why we're going to need a repeater immediately after this comparator to boost the signal back up. Now, the redstone is going to branch off here in two different directions. The first one is going to go into a second repeater here, which is going to feed back to the comparator. Now, the reason we need this second repeater is because we need the signal strong enough to turn that comparator off. So even if this is full of items, this signal coming in from the side will be strong enough to shut it back off, and that will create our clock. And the second one is to power the dropper itself. So I'm going to take redstone to the back here to power this block with the repeater. Remember, I need a repeater here because if I place redstone dust, then that's going to connect to the other side of this comparator, which is not what we want. Remember, with how redstone wiring works, it needs to power a block that is next to the component. So because this block is being powered, this should make the dropper work. So now, whenever this dropper has items in, it will spit all of them out automatically, like that. And I don't need to do a thing. I don't need to touch a lever, I don't need to touch a button. All I need to do is supply it with items. And that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you very much for watching. Like and subscribe if you enjoyed or if you found this useful, and I will see you in the next video.